For any of you who have hung around the Bible very much, this morning's stories are some pretty familiar ones. Jacob wrestling with the angel and the feeding of the 5,000. I'm old enough that the versions in my own first memories have me sitting on small chairs in Sunday school rooms with someone's very nice mother putting flannel figures up on a felt board. Some of you may be more of the VeggieTales era, and still others of you may remember the godly play felt square, carefully laid out on the floor while you sat cross-legged around it in a circle, not on a chair. But in the way of all Bible stories, it doesn't matter if you've heard them 100 times or you've just heard them for the first time. They always have something new to say, if only you have ears to listen. Our first story this morning takes us the next step in the journey we've been traveling through the lives of our ancestors in the faith, the founding heroes of the Hebrew Scriptures. We've been following Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and now Jacob and Leah and Rachel. We've seen what a manipulator Jacob is from the very moment of his birth, when he grabs the heel of his twin Esau on their way out of the womb and into the world. He's a manipulator, a deceiver, a player who is always seeking to work the world in his own favor. He's tricked his brother out of both his birthright and his blessing, fled the scene as he always seems to do, and now, years later, is facing an irate Esau, his twin, who's heading his way on the other side of the river Jabbok with an army of 400 men. Jacob is terrified and says so. And I may not be the only one when I confess that some part of my heart is secretly glad that it seems he's about to get his comeuppance. I'm just being honest here. Jacob is there with his entire household and all his flocks. In other words, with everything he has and is. Night is coming on, and now Jacob sends them all, servants, kids, wives, concubines, animals, across the river toward the advancing Esau, and stays safely by himself on the other side. Are you getting the picture here? Now he's alone, laying down in the dark. A man appears and begins to wrestle with him. This mysterious being struggles with him all through the long night. It seems as though Jacob is about to prevail just as first light is appearing. The creature's strength is beginning to ebb, and he reaches out and dislocates Jacob's hip. It creates a limp that will mark Jacob for the rest of his life. Jacob realizes he's been struggling with someone or something divine, and ever the one to wrest something for himself out of any situation. He demands a blessing from his opponent before he will let go. "Who are you?" asks the stranger. Though by now we realize that the stranger already knows who Jacob is, that this divine being must be asking the question for a different reason other than for a simple identity check. Because in the ancient world, you see, a name was not just a name, it was a descriptor. It told someone not just who you were, but what you were. What kind of person your life had shown you to be. So Jacob knows that if he gives his name, he will be making a confession of sorts. He will be naming out loud the full truth of his life, declaring what a scoundrel and cheater he has been, because that's what his name Jacob means, one who deceives. An exhausted Jacob who has wrestled with God all night long, with the God who has fought him till his strength was nearly finished, finally tells the truth. He admits what his character has been like until this moment, what he's done to people he loved, how he has used them and betrayed them and fooled them into giving things they never intended to give. And it's only now, in this moment of truth, that the stranger, the angel, that God relents and says, I'm giving you a new name. You will be called Israel, because you have striven with humans and with God and have prevailed. Which was a pretty grace-filled name, because in reality, Jacob hadn't prevailed at all. He has merely survived. Jacob gets a new name, and thus a new life, a fresh start, a chance to make a change, empowered by the grace of God. He asks the stranger's name, which God declines to give, but Jacob, now Israel, clearly knows, because he names the place where this transformative struggle has happened Peniel, meaning, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. He receives God's blessing now in his new self, and he continues on his way, limping, we're told, because of his hip, changed forever, in more ways than one. Whatever else this story may mean, it means that it's okay for us to wrestle with God, to fight and challenge and struggle. It means that God can handle it, that God is much less fragile than we've sometimes been taught to believe. God can handle our questions, our grief, our fear, our anger. It means that God actually welcomes our wrestling with the divine presence, who sometimes does feel like a stranger, something mysterious and unknown, even confusing. Because if we wrestle with someone, we've engaged. We haven't given up in despair. We haven't simply walked away and severed the relationship. We're still willing to be in the game with all of our strength, even if we can't see well in the dark, even if we don't know who our opponent is at some moments. Jacob's wrestling match with the angel means that God will stay in, hang on to us, keep engaging us, sometimes till we're completely worn down and exhausted, till we get to the point where we recognize that we can't do life on our own strength, or until we finally see the complete, naked, incontrovertible truth about ourselves. When we finally see that we cannot save ourselves ever. Then, as Jacob learned, God can finally transform us, give us a new name, a fresh start, a different way to live. I got to thinking about at least two things when mulling this story over the past week. The whole notion of wrestling and struggling seems especially timely and familiar somehow, because I think we're all struggling. Our nation is struggling. The whole world is struggling. And I wondered, what is it that we're struggling with? It's certainly at least the tiny virus with the enormous power to change nearly everything about our daily lives. The virus that is taking so many people from so many families in every corner of the world. It does feel like we're in some kind of endless struggle, wrestling in the dark with an enemy we can't see. And that got me wondering, is there some way in which the coronavirus could be a bringer of divine gifts? A blessing that will be apparent only after the struggle is over and dawn is breaking. And what could that gift be? And what we as the body of Christ, and more specifically as St. Mark's Church, are called to be present to our neighbors. How might that be changed as a result of this wrestling match? What if now, like Israel, with his wonky hip lipping away from his old identity, with a permanent reminder of the struggle, a reminder that everyone around him would always see, that he would always see and experience? How might we be changed after our current struggle? What truth might we need to tell about who we are, or what we've been, or how we've acted or failed to act, so that we might finally hear the mysterious holy stranger give us a new name, hand us a new identity, a new way of being in the world? And what marks might we hope the world could see that would remind them, demonstrate to them what we've learned? Like Jacob, what might we need to leave behind, do without, in order to enter our new post-COVID world? A new era when our neighbors could visibly see that our struggles had not been in vain, that it had led us somewhere hopeful for ourselves and for them. I don't know, but I do know that we are surely struggling, that like Jacob, we're getting tired, that we seem to be in a similar time of darkness, of in-betweenness, when night has fallen and the dawn has not yet come, however desperately we are wanting to welcome it. So maybe, just maybe, the river Animus could be our river Jabbok. And maybe, just maybe, we are being reassured that God will never let us go. And maybe, just maybe, though we're in a darkness that still seems wholly like the deepest hours of the night, we are being reassured this morning that the horizon really will begin to lighten up, that the dawn is certain, even if our eyes want to tell us that it's not. I don't know, my friends, but it seems to me that we have some company this morning in our ancestor Jacob, now turned Israel, that we have something to learn from his story of struggle and darkness and of telling the full truth about himself, that just perhaps we have some soul searching to do, some things that God needs for us to see about ourselves, always and only so that we can be given a new identity, a new way of being that's visible for everyone to see. That maybe this pandemic has things to teach us, things that it's already teaching us if we listen deeply and notice things even in the dark. Maybe it can be a time of transformation not to be squandered, as difficult as it currently is. Because it seems to me that if we come out of this on the other side of this pandemic, on the other side of this struggle, and haven't changed, then something sacred may truly have been wasted. That an opportunity for potentially game-changing, life-changing transformation may have been squandered. So let's find the courage to wonder what that gift might be. Wonder how we can stay awake, stay fully engaged, even if the ways we've usually engaged have temporarily been taken away. They may even be some of the things we need to leave behind if we're going to continue on our journey. But maybe our seeing in the dark is part of seeing the new ways of being and the new ways of engaging that are coming our way, that are creating new opportunities and new methods, new ways to engage not only with God, but with each other and with the world around us, which is where God always wants us to be. How is it that we can stay together in order to help each other ask these kinds of questions, the kind that can bring God's movement in this dark and struggle-filled moment to light, make it visible. Because if struggles are sacred, as this story seems to say, then we don't want to wake up in the morning and discover that we've wasted a chance to engage, a chance to hang on until the end, though our strength may nearly be gone. Lost the chance to grab hold and stay in the fight till we finally told the truth and finally been given the blessing that God has been longing to give us in every moment of the dark night. Let's keep wrestling, St. Mark's, till we can wrest from this moment the gift that God is even now waiting to give us for the sake of the world. Amen.